Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who has gotten a lot of requests to review the album Sometimes I Might Be an Introvert by Little Simz. So here it comes. I have reviewed her once before, and in that review of her previous EP, Drop 6, I asked the question, is she really the new Lauryn Hill? You know, that's sort of the buzz around her, and I talked about it then. And I'm going to address that question with the answer mostly. Mostly she is the new Lauryn Hill. I'll get into that more later. But I want to start with a more provocative comparison. And this isn't really so much about her as much as it is about the state of hip-hop now. You know, last couple of weeks has been a great couple of weeks for hip-hop. And what I think is more just a fun way to start off this review is to think about where we are, you know. Instead of comparing this to Lauryn Hill, what if we compared this to another great rap album of this year, Whole Lotta Red by Playboi Carti? I'm just going to open up with this, don't worry, I'm not going to go track by track. But what do we have here in the differences? The fact that these are both in the same genre, I believe just shows the amazing strength and vitality of hip-hop in 2021. Now, they're both great albums, but you know, one is minimalist, crazy beats made by a whole team of producers. The other is a masterfully produced, cohesive work by one singular production genius. One has basically only negative themes, a whole bevy of negative themes around drugs and crime and sex and depravity. The other is only positive themes, so many positive themes that, as I'm going to say later, there might be too much positivity. One is a mumbling rapper who mixes in repetitive lines with all sorts of auto-tuning and insanity, and the other is creative and clear and enunciates in a way that makes me feel like I'm just mumbling here in my office. And I don't know, I just think it's a fun thing to think about, that the avant-garde, abstract, and aggravating, nihilistic sounds of Playboi Carti are the mainstream. The sweet, polished, aspirational, harmonious music of Little Simz is the alternative. It's worth pointing out that in the history of rock and roll, this has been inverted, you know. The cleaner it sounds, the more understandable it is, the more mainstream it is, where the underground is where a lot of the sort of forward motion in terms of abstraction and aggravation happens. So that's just kind of a funny comparison to make, something to think about before I get into the album properly. I'm not sure what I'm going to title this video. I'm not sure if I'm going to go with my initial take, which is to talk about the conscious perfection. Now, when I say perfection and conscious perfection, that might sound like an unequivocally positive take. It's not wholly positive. I will say that this conscious perfection, right? And by that I mean it's an album that is very conscious. It shows a lot of very conscious rhymes and raps, and it's about a lot of different important themes. It also seems to be somewhat aware of this ability that this album has. And the question is it trying to be all things to all people? And if so, does it succeed? And if so, is that what we really want from an album? Okay. I remember when I reviewed Chance the Rapper, and I wondered if it was greatness or Grammy bait. I wonder, you know, could we say, is this miraculous or Mercury bait? You know, all these themes, this just ridiculous positivity about womanhood, about her family, her relationships, about herself, about like women in England, women abroad, blackness, international blackness, British blackness, thoughts about shyness, working through your therapy, following your dreams, embracing change. As somebody who loves rap music, I am always struck by the fact that when things are this positive, it takes me a while to get used to it. I'll even give you the example of Lauryn Hill, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. I loved that album, but over time I started to wonder, like, is this just too positive? Is this just too much of what we want from music? Is this not like the dream of what music could be? The sort of intersectional power of this music. To answer this, I'm going to go with another thing that I talk about a fair amount on this channel when it comes to rap. There's a lot of words. Rappers have to say a lot, okay? You know, I mean, you take some of the most famous rock bands, and they have to come up with like 4 lines and then a chorus, and then 4 lines and then a chorus, and then maybe a bridge. And the lines themselves can be ridiculously simple. Take U2, you know, like they just do the opposite, you know. You're hungry and you're full, and you're tall and you're short, and then you just go, whoo, and then you've sold 1 million albums, you know. Like rap artists have to fill with so many words. So even though this album is relentlessly positive, relentlessly sort of on the nose for what you want for an inspiring, uplifting rap album, I think that is partly just because there are so many words. And when I kind of go back to, you know, like when I review albums, like I reviewed the Alfredo album by Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist, and I had the same kind of feeling. I just got a little bit tired of all the raps about the drug trade and just like song after song and line after line. I think as hip-hop fans, we need to build in an acceptance of a certain amount of repetition or a certain kind of monotony, where if our artists are going to be honest and they're not just going to pick songs that are a different theme just to do it, we just have to get used to these themes being just over and over and over again. Conscious perfection, okay? So I think it is a perfect conscious rap album, okay? And I don't mean that at all in a derogatory way, right? Conscious rap is not actually my favorite genre of rap music. I like it. I think it's a very valuable genre. It happens to not be my favorite. But still, like, it is perfection in it because she is so confessional, because she is so honest with herself, because she talks about herself in society and society the way it affects herself. And we get a real view of a personal and political album that completely succeeds on both fronts. Part of the perfection, though, certainly comes from the reason that I'm going to say that she is mostly the next Lauryn Hill. The thing about Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is that she co-produced or produced the entire thing. I guess the thing that prevents, and mind you, being Lauryn Hill is, there's a reason there's only been one Lauryn Hill, right? What she was able to do is astounding. So, sort of stylistically, emotionally, intellectually, and in terms of her ability to rhyme and integrate rhyming with singing, Lil Simz is definitely there, okay? And that's as high of a compliment as you can give. But she's just not producing. But instead, she gets Inflow, this guy who I don't know much about. He seems fairly mysterious. I guess his real name is Dean Josiah. I don't know. But he produces the entire thing. So this is the next best thing to being Lauryn Hill. Having one producer with a cohesive vision to create this album, which at times doesn't even feel like a rap album. It feels like a soul album. And not like a modern soul album, it feels like a 70s soul album. At times it feels like it might be like a Shirley Bassey James Bond theme. It feels very cinematic, very grand, and very sweeping with these intimate lyrics. It's an amazing combination of the intimate and the epic. And it happens all the way throughout the album. So I'm going to get to the song. First of all, there's someone outside my office who's mowing the lawn, so you're going to hear that sound. I'm sorry, I don't edit. Is this better, having that window up there, or is having that ugly... You tell me, what's better, the coat hanger or the window? Okay, you can tell me in the comments. So let's actually go through this album. Let's go through sort of track by track. I'm going to start off with the first track, and this is going to be my homework to you. If you've never heard her before, this opening track is like a thesis statement. It very clearly lays out both the sounds and the words that she's going to be employing. I'm going to include a link to it up there. It's called Introvert. And the very first thing from the intro is it feels important. This sort of bombastic marching band, dun, 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 drums and horns. And like she even announces that there's a war, and this leads into this kind of nice sort of acoustic guitar, even a sort of Radiohead style guitar, and the drums come in before the layering of synths and some strings. I mean, I've listened to the song, 4 or 5 times. There's just so many details throughout the verses and the chorus. Things get more lush. Sometimes the drums fall out. Sometimes other strings come in. Sometimes other things happening. I just imagine Inflow standing in front of like a board with like 65, like 80 tracks in front of him and just trying to deal with all of this to fit all this in here without it ever feeling overstuffed or not full. Overstuffed or like not harmonious. It's always harmonious. It's always great. And it doesn't sound like many other things. I can't think of any other album that sounds this much like a combination between a soundtrack and 70s soul, while feeling like very organic, not organic, very acoustic, like very much like real instruments, very little synthesizers, very little even electric guitars. It's really this sort of cinematic, like you could play it with the London Symphony Orchestra. You could do this whole album with London Symphony Orchestra, and I bet she will, because I think this album is going to be very popular because it's so good. She could do the entire album with the London Symphony Orchestra, and all she would need is just to make sure there was a drummer there. Lyrically, first of all, Little Simz, you screwed me up. She has this one line where she says, "I study humans, that makes me an anthropologist." And you don't know this about teachers, you might not know. Teachers have panic dreams the same way students do. So I had this panic dream that I was supposed to teach a class on Anthropology 101, because I heard this song earlier in the day. And it was this terrible nightmare because, like, I didn't know anything. I didn't know the textbook. There was like 100 students in a giant amphitheater, and I just had to kill time. So I just go, I want you to tell me, what do you think anthropology is? And that was as far as I got in the dream. But it's a terrible dream, and it's all Little Simz's fault. But in these lyrics, we have this great combination of personal and political. I study humans, that makes me an anthropologist. I'm not into politics, but I know it's dark times. Part of the world still living in apartheid. So going in, and she also references herself. Sometimes I might be an introvert. These great cinematic interludes, like the echoes of the whole thing just feels so much like this huge, deep movie. And then it leads into kind of a weak chorus. And I'm choosing this as an intentional song, as not my favorite song on the album. But sort of each song at times, whenever there's anything that doesn't feel like it's absolute 10 out of 10 perfection, it jumps out. So the chorus is maybe there. And then it leads to the next verse, which she says, "I need a license to feel." And I know everyone's been talking about who's going to be the next James Bond. I'm just saying it right now. It's got to be Little Simz. It's got to be her with... All you need to be Bond is British, right? We've already established that the next James Bond, James Bond doesn't have to be a brunette, doesn't have to be white, it doesn't have to be a man. I think she should be the next James Bond with a license to feel. Really go full in on the breadth of what it is to be British in the 21st century, not just according to some weird spy in the 50s. And then she kind of goes on and defines herself, am I Simz the artist or Simby the person? I suppose her real name is something that starts with Simby. And then she follows it with, "To you I'm smiling, but I'm really hurting." So this is a fairly traditional hip-hop convention of, the person is hurting and then the rapper is kind of flaunting. But it's good and it's necessary in this whole song. You see, I'm just talking about this one song. I'm like just getting exhausted getting through it. Knocking down communities to re-up on properties. She's talking about the changes that are happening in England, happening all over the world, gentrification. So she's able to talk about apartheid in the world, and she's able to talk about all these things that are happening in the country, and then the sounds are dropped out, and then she just says something, and this is often the question I ask: is she too on the nose? Is she too perfectly designed for like an English professor or a professor of African American and international blackness studies, right? She just says just declaratively, "I am a black woman and I am a proud one," just like, okay, right? Like we sort of got that from the rest of the content, but at the same time, maybe that's what she actually needs to say. Then it gets cinematic before this outro, and the outro is my biggest problem with this album. Emma Corrin, who apparently is an actress, who apparently was in a TV show about the British royalty, which I haven't watched because I don't care about the royalty, because down to the monarchy. I'm an American. We didn't fight many good wars, but one of them was to end monarchy. So this actress she's all the way throughout this album, like serving as kind of like a yoga instructor and self-help guide, who just seems to be talking to Little Simz, but it's distracting to me. Everything is way too on the nose. Your introversion led you here. Intuition protected you along the way. Feelings allowed you to be well balanced, and perspective gave you foresight. The album is empowering enough, like just with how good it is, with how good her rhymes are, just how good the production is, how just great of an artist she is. This addition of this woman's voice, who's not Little Simz, coming in and giving help and aid and encouragement, it's just too much for me. it's just too much on the positivity. My cynicism can only be so far asleep, you know. But still, this leads into the question of how can she become a woman, which then leads into the next song called Woman, which is great because it went from this huge, inflow went from this huge bombastic first song to a very tight soul groove. Great 70s sound, super tight, and she just goes through an entire verse going through all the women of the world, from Ghana to England to Brooklyn to Barbados to India, and just like goes all the way throughout, just praising women for their strength. And again, the cynicism meter on me, right? This is why it's important not to be too cynical, because you can just say, oh, whatever. But there actually aren't that many songs like this. There aren't very many songs about international womanhood. You'd think there would be, but there aren't. And the songs that exist like that are mostly marginalized, right? Like there's very few popular songs about international womanhood, about the collective struggle of women across the world, right? I mean, I Am Every Woman, in theory, is about that, but I can't tell you what the verses are to that song. All I know is the chorus, you know? So I'm happy this song exists. Again, the chorus could have been a little bit stronger. Maybe I just don't like Cleo Soul. And it leads into the next song, Two Worlds Apart. So Inflow is sort of showing off here, because he goes from the bombastic cinematic, then he goes to the tight 70s groove, which it seems like he made himself. I don't think it's a sample. And then here, he has a Smokey Robinson sample. And you don't know this about me. I've never said this on the channel. I love Smokey Robinson. Like, I love Smokey Robinson so much. There's a few singers out there where I listen to them sing, and this is gonna sound cheesy, but I feel like it's proof that God exists. I wasn't planning on saying this, okay? I don't have a script, I have notes, and you can see that is not on here, but it's true. When I hear Smokey Robinson singing, I believe God exists. That's how much I love Smokey Robinson, and this is a great chopped up sample. And it's a funny counterpoint I think you could make to Otis off of Watch the Throne, which like took another one of those singers, Otis Redding, and just like made his voice all weird and kind of aggressive and opposite of what he is. Whereas here, the kind of sweetness, the of course smokiness, the intimacy, and the sort of elation you feel hearing Smokey Robinson's voice is carried over in this sample. It's nice here because she's actually repeating words a little bit, which is nice to have her just take it a little bit easy, not always be delivering different things. I like her rhymes and her flow in the verse, in particular how she rhymes the word koala with Kendrick Lamar. Accents are important. Accents are a wonderful addition to hip-hop, right? So I don't think you could rhyme Lamar with koala unless you had a very thick accent, British accent. And I just love this Smokey sample, very happy to hear it. Next song is called I Love You, I Hate You. This one fooled me. It has this great, another kind of cinematic James Bond opening with harps, a cool kind of like clipped sample. I'm very happy that this song exists because it's slightly junky. It's a little bit janky, a little bit funky. It's not quite as clean as the rest of the production on the album. And you hear a song called I Love You, I Hate You. You know what this is about. It's about a toxic relationship where she really loves this guy and they've been dating for a while, but really he's not good to her and then she's not good to him, and it's a I love you, hate you relationship, right? That's what all songs like this are about. Wrong. It's about a relationship with their father. Ah, God damn it. Conscious perfection, okay? This is the song that we need. We needed the song about international womanhood, and she gave it to us. We need a song about a difficult relationship between a daughter and a father. We need more songs like this. Not angry songs, not hate-filled songs, but songs of hate and love. Songs that keep fathers accountable while also accepting their limitations. Beautiful production detail all the way throughout, like this, especially in the second chorus, this guitar comes in. Very cool kind of epic horns seem to come out of nowhere, and then the end is like just horns for a while, moving the drums. And she even discusses, I read an interview with her somewhere on Lyric Genius where she says how hard it was for her to write this. And it's true, it's hard writing about your family. It's hard saying lines like a woman who hasn't confronted all her daddy issues. But these things need to exist and need to happen. And the complexity in this relationship, and I'm going to assume that this is not just the complexity between all fathers and mothers, all fathers and daughters, but in particular of first, second generation immigrants right? That's a different kind of relationship. There's different expectations, there's different pressures, there's different cultural clashes that have to be resolved, intergenerational, it's a whole nother thing. I get the sense that's all in here. So if you are a daughter, a first or second generation immigrant, anywhere in the world, this is your song to help you mediate your difficulty relationship you have with your father. Thank you, Little Simz. That is the point of music, you know? There is one thing I'll say here, which perhaps Little Simz has what I would call an excess of empathy. And I know because I am the picture of the excess of empathy. I've sympathized with all of my abusers my entire life, okay? So I do wonder, there's 2 points in this album where I think about this. This is the first one. He was once just a boy, I often seem to forget, looking at Polaroids of pictures secretly kept. You know what was destroyed, but you don't know what was left. So she appears to be really forgiving him because of the empathy she feels towards him and the difficulty he had. We'll get into that later, but it's an interesting question that this album is a very psychologically honest album that's going through her dealing and like working through things and being a better self. But maybe, and maybe I'm just projecting my own problems, maybe this is a thing she needs to work on too. Because I know I need to work on it. Because man, someone can kick me in the shins and I'll just be like, whatever led that person to kick me in the shins, they must really have a worse time than I do. That then leads to the next song, Little Q, which I guess is with her cousin, Qudus, Qudus. This is cool. It's kind of like a Jackson 5 sounding beat. He appears on the first part, and the second part is just her rapping. It's cool. It's like na 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 sound, and these kids like drops out, and it's just one sound, and the drums come in for rapping, and it's her dealing with her family issues. It's her dealing with like this feeling of like struggling with anger towards her family and learning to accept them, which is a whole other theme on this album, which again I imagine is partly reflected in difficulty of the immigrant experience. I'm not positive, but I imagine that plays a big part of it. Excess of Empathy, Part 2. But the boy that stabbed me is just as damaged as me. I could have been the reflection that he hated. Okay, so she got stabbed. She has a wonderful verse about getting stabbed, okay? A truly spectacular, just very well-made verse about being stabbed and the emotions that she felt at the time. And here she is with that excess of empathy. I was once walking around the Halles in Paris, and I was talking to a friend of mine about how the Parisian metro system intentionally alienates immigrants and children of lower classes to the suburbs of Paris, and how this one metro station is their only entrance into the center of the city because the large trains, the RERs, go into the center. While I was explaining this to my friend, some young guy comes up, punches me in the stomach, steals my camera. I 100% only thought about that in the terms of the fact that the thing I was just describing, the alienation, the poverty, the systematic marginalization, that was what that kid was suffering from, and that I was just a part of that. When in reality, Little Simz, it doesn't matter if that boy was damaged as you. He shouldn't have stabbed you. I shouldn't have been robbed. I need to just accept that it hurts to get punched in the stomach and robbed. And no social reasoning will mean that I shouldn't be angry and upset and allow myself to feel hurt. I don't know. Now who's too on the nose? The next song is called Gems, which is basically a yoga interlude. This is that person again, the person who played Princess Di. Take your time, inhale, exhale, breathe. Do you want 15 years or 15 minutes? Again, it's fine, but if it were up to me, this person, every single word she says on this album would be cut. There'd be another listening party. She'd Kanye this out of the entire album, but it's fine. It may be actually important, now that I think about it, because if this album is to have as much reach as I think Little Simz wants it to have, she can't just assume that people will pick up subtlety. It actually might be important to have somebody just slamming you over the head, saying, feel good about yourself, work for your dreams, I don't know. Then the next song caught me off guard. Speed. Straight rhymes. Minimalist beat. Hey, Inflow, why are you not more famous? I've never heard of you before, but you proved with the first song that you can do James Bond, and now it's basically a Yeezus track right here. That kind of like grimy, gritty sounds. And she even directly references Kanye in this verse, right, in the first verse. I mean, this is definitely my favorite song on the album, just because it happens to be more my style. And she's just bragging about her talent. I'm running with ease. I am me. Catch up if you please. That's just a great line. That's a great flex. That's like one of the great ways to flex about how strong you are and how smart you are and how good of a rapper you are. Next song is called Standing Ovation. Just an amazing beat with these like drum fills that are just ridiculous. I don't think it's a sample. Again, I think this guy actually like has musicians. And just the precision on the drumming of this bombastic horns is great. And then she goes on and on about the need for approval and why do we need to be remembered. And then it seems like she sort of answers her question by talking about how she wants to be remembered and she wants to be approved of. And then she ends the whole thing with like a long list of great achievements by Africans and people of African descent throughout history, right? Like she just goes through this long list. So we do need to actually represent and clap for all the people she mentions at the end of the song. And we need to stand up and clap for her. Next song is called I See You. It's the one song I don't like on the album. I just don't like it. It's a love song, but it's that kind of weird, idealized man that she's singing about who's just super perfect. And listen, I might have missed the subtext. It could be that my comments are going to be filled with people saying, Sky, you underestimated Little Simz. That song I See You isn't actually about this, it's that. But I just didn't want to listen to it. So please tell me in the comments, what did I miss about I See You? Because I just didn't like that song. The Rapper Who Came to Tea is an interlude, part of another theme in here, like why are you here? This is a sort of larger question in general for hip-hop artists, you know, why do they get to be where they are? You know, like who invited them to the corridors of power? Of course, nobody invited them. They kicked down the door with their talent and skill and placed themselves there. And it's also about the social pressure that she feels, I suppose, as she rises up in society through her success. And it's pretty epic for an interlude. Again, just the ability to just come up with epic beats is astounding from Inflow. Rolling Stone is the next song. Cool kind of grimy sound, a really great beat. She talks about maybe being a brat. She sort of admits to not always being perfect, which is nice because a lot of this album, she feels a little kind of high and mighty. And that's kind of the Lauryn Hill thing as well, right? Like the sort of like, I figured everything out. That's like a weird position to have on a confessional album. And so here she undercuts that a bit. Just great 808 outbreak, I mean a 808 outro. Right? She just like uses clever lyricism, she like slips into German, and it's this kind of like low-key like break in the whole cinematic album to just have her kill it. She just kills it on this very simple 808 beat. And I think this is intentional, right? She's showing, oh, can I do this thing? The thing that you want. You want me to just do the rap thing where I just kill it over a beat? All right, I'm going to kill it on this beat. And then she moves on. And that's what she does. This is a really good album. Protect My Energy is just a ridiculously 80s song. It's funny because the last album I reviewed was Baby Keem. And that album ended with a very similar style, like 80s pop, sort of cheesy soul song. And that's what she has here, about like being alone, about being guarded. I've got problems, but I'm not effing weak. You know, a lot of these questions about like, how guarded does she need to be? And I suppose that's the other larger theme all the way throughout, is this introversion and extroversion. What does it mean to be guarded? What does it mean to feel, and to feel that your feelings make you weak, which is also said throughout the album. I feel like you could do a lot of different takes on this album, where you could just do a single hour-long video about the political stance. You could do a single hour-long video about the presentation of introversion, and then a whole nother one just about the way that she talks about the position of immigrants in England. Like there's so much to this album. It's extremely rich. Never Make Promises is a choral interlude. That's cool. It's just a cool like idea. It's a chorus. Like you go to a high school chorus and give them this and they could sing it. It even goes in rounds at point. Then, that's crazy. This is a lot. There's a lot going on in this album. We get to the song Point and Kill, which has the best feature. So it has these great African rhythms and percussion and this great bass work and just these rhythms that are just not typical for hip hop, very African. And then we have Obong Jayar, who is a singer from Nigeria. Now, Little Simz is British and Nigerian, and so it makes sense she'd have a Nigerian singer on here, but he is just awesome. He has this way of singing in the chorus, and then she actually changes her flow a little bit, like very subtly. I don't know if I'm just expecting to see something and so I hear it, or expecting to hear something and then I see it. But it sounds to me like her flow reminds me more of some of the African rap that I've heard than British rap. But maybe that's just the way that these rhythms are changing the way that it sounds. And it's just catchy and awesome. It's as good of a hybrid between African music and hip hop as I've ever heard. And I'm a specialist in French hip hop, which traditionally does that the best. It is a excellent, excellent song. And then it seems like the next song is basically just a beat change. It's still in the same African mode for the song Fear No Man. It's kind of celebratory beat. And kind of like sort of back in this African sound, but it's like a celebration. And at times, she even reminds me, her flow in this one reminds me a little bit of Missy Elliott. I don't quite know why, but there's like 2 points where she sounds like that. The next is The Garden, which is another one of those interludes. Give your garden the seeds it needs. No, what is it? Plant your seeds and water your garden with love. Like, I get it. Okay, fine. I don't have to like everything, do I? All you people who wanted me to review this album, do you also find those things to be aggravating, or is it just Mr. Cynical Bostonian over here? How did you get here? Another one of these questions about the place of the rapper in higher society, or the place of the children of immigrants in higher society. You know, this question, how did she get here? And she's just rapping over this like semi-gospel chorus, like no drums in the beginning. And it's sort of this great answer, how did she get here? She got here through her work. She talks about finding her old lyric books, hearing her old songs, and then like this beat comes in, and it's just great. It's just like a great way of bringing in the beat and keeping in this interesting rhymes. Nothing in life comes easy, and you work twice as hard because you're black. Used to think my mom exaggerated till the world showed me it's fact. That's a great example of her on-the-nose style lyrics that also just completely work. And then we have what I think is the most exemplary lyric on the entire album. It's clever. It's maybe a little bit overly optimistic or positive, but it fits, it's interesting, and it's memorable. Made up of the same stars I wish upon. I think that's the example lyric. That's like, as far as I can tell, it's sort of like Little Simz in a box. As much as you could put her lyricism in a box, which you can't really because she talks about so many different things. But I would say that's the most exemplary line. Then the song Misunderstood. Kind of an old pun, that's fine. This is cool because it's piano-led, and I haven't heard much piano on here. A very understated drum line to start off, like no snare, just a hi-hat and a bass. This weird, odd, high voice singing. Again, talking about feelings equal weakness. This album so much is a struggle about feelings and what to do with feelings. And then has this kind of gentle, nice ending, which talks about what she wants from her family, how they want her just to treat her like a normal person, and mixing family and business, and it doesn't work. And you just realize, even though you've been listening to this album for an hour and 5 minutes, and it's been filled with like personal truths and global thoughts and all this, like there's still so much more to say. So there you go. There's the conscious perfection of this album. Thank you to all of you who have been asking me to review it. I hope I did it the service that you were hoping I would. It's great. Is that really how I'm going to end it? Maybe I should do something else more fun than that. I don't know. I'll show you one of the things I have on my. I have a whole thing filled with toys down here. So I'm going to show you one of the toys I have down here. Yeah, here's a pretty good one. This is Godzilla and his son, maybe? Got that in Japan. Okay, there's the camera.